Good afternoon, and welcome to everyone. I'm Terry Brooks with Kentucky Youth Advocates, and we are so appreciative of all of you being here, partners, colleagues, distinguished guests, and press, and we really appreciate your presence. Today is a very, very important day for kids in Kentucky because it's the moment that we get to think about what is the state of kids and what do we need to do about it. So the most important pieces of today, I would humbly suggest, are coming later in the program because you're going to hear from young people themselves. But it's important that we kind of set up the parameters and we think about what kind of data and what kind of solutions we're dealing with. I would be remiss if I did not begin by pointing out that we could not do this product, process, or any of the engagement events around Kids Count without the support of Charter Communications, Aetna, and also the important folks that partner with us at Cosair Charities. So would you take just a second and thank our sponsors, because without them, so I was told that I needed to make sure we were on the same page and that everybody understood what Kids Count was and why it's so important. So a little history lesson is important. Lieutenant Governor used to be a history teacher, so she'll appreciate that. Over 30 years ago, UPS began to flex its philanthropic muscles, and they wanted to figure out what was the state of America's children. They heard lots of anecdotes, stories, and opinions, but they didn't hear many facts. If you know anything about UPS, you know they are not interested in data. They are obsessed by data. They really want to know how long it takes that package car driver to get from his or her vehicle to your front porch, back to the vehicle, and on the road. So they challenged one of their philanthropic arms, the Annie E. Casey Foundation in Baltimore, to invent a data-rich snapshot of Kentucky's kids. The result of that is Kids Count, which in many ways is the national report card for children. Each summer, there is a national Kids Count release, and each state has a Kids Count group. KYA is Kentucky's Kids Count group. And what that does is it offers us a state-by-state comparison in arenas of economic well-being, health, family and community, and education. Now, when I see that book that comes out in June, I look at two different aspects. One is, how is Kentucky compared to how Kentucky's been doing? So what areas are we getting better in as a state? What are we declining in? What's the status quo? The other area, and I have to confess, I don't look a whole lot at Connecticut and Oregon, but I look really closely at Tennessee and Indiana and West Virginia, because I want to see how we're doing compared to peer states. So that's the role that national book plays. What we learned a long time ago is that while it is really important that we look at our kids on a state basis, folks in local communities want to know how we're doing locally. So again, I see her up front, so I'm going to pick on the Lieutenant Governor. My bet is that now she's interested in the kid profile, but 4 years ago, when she was in Bergen, Kentucky, she wanted to know how Mercer County was doing. And so today is when we release disaggregated data, where we take every one of those national indicators and we take it down to a county level. So all 120 counties in Kentucky get their own report card. Every county in Kentucky can take a look and see how are we doing in health and economic well-being, in family and community, and in education. And that's the real important piece of what today is about. In terms of takeaways, because we're very aware that there's lots of folks who get lots of reports. And if those reports are not actionable, they are nothing more than dust collectors on bookshelves. So we always want to challenge the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branches of our state government to look at this data and to take action. And I would suggest to you that there are any number of takeaways. There are 16 data points, and I'm guessing that none of you want me to do a 30-minute discussion of each one of them. So what I want to do is just lift up 3 areas for your consideration. Illustrative of so many data points, I think, is our economic well-being indicator. And that's interesting to me for a couple different reasons. Like most indicators, that is a good news, bad news story. The good news is that we continue to have a reduced level of childhood poverty in Kentucky. We are better off today than we were a couple years ago, and that is news to celebrate. But none of us can celebrate when we know that over 200,000 little boys and girls woke up today in poverty. So that's good news, bad news. The other fascinating aspect of that element to me is that we know the state rate is 19%. About 1 out of 5 kids in Kentucky live in poverty. In the poorest parts of Louisville, that childhood poverty rate is at 40%. In the 6 most rural counties in Kentucky, all in southeast Kentucky, the poverty rate is 40%. Isn't that fascinating? That the most rural zip codes in Kentucky and the most urban zip codes in Kentucky have the identical poverty rate. And I would suggest to you that the policy solutions for the most rural area and the most urban area are very similar. So this data refutes that notion that we as a state are an urban state versus a rural state. Instead, it suggests that policy solutions are common ground, common sense, that can serve the kids in the most rural parts of Kentucky and the most urban parts of Kentucky. The second arena that I would call to your attention is around child welfare. And it may surprise you, and the 3 individuals I'm going to mention may take offense, but what I would tell you is that Steve Beshear, Matt Bevan, and Andy Beshear all shared a commitment to the fundamental reform of child welfare. Innovative, progressive, hard-hitting efforts are underway, but the data tells us that whatever we're doing is not enough. If you dig into the data, what you will see is an unprecedented spike in the number of kids who are entering the child welfare system, and you will see a sadly unique trend line about how few kids are being reunited with families. So if common solutions percolate through the economic security part of this book, what I would tell you is the deeper you dig into the child welfare section of this book, it is going to tell you that as hard as we are working, we are not working hard enough. That we need more resources, a continued commitment to innovation, because the trend line in those policy arenas are among the most troubling. The final area that I would just lift up, and I'm lifting this up because there is so much rhetoric in the other direction coming from the General Assembly. The portrait that this year's Kids Count book paints is that juvenile justice efforts that have been underway in Kentucky for several years are beginning to work. You start looking, for instance, at detention rates, and what you find is that the thoughtful work that has emanated from the General Assembly since 2014 is working. And yet there is a real threat at hand, which is that lawmakers grabbing headlines are wanting to take us in the exact wrong direction on juvenile justice. And so what we hope happens is that the facts that are in this book might just slow down that movement. Again, those are just the highlights, and you're going to hear important observations from very, very significant voices in just a second. My final thought, and I want to leave it with you, is that we know that young people's voices count. There's a great quote from a guy named Alaric Hutchinson. I don't know him, except he advertises himself as an author, cowboy, and world champion line dancer. I just want to meet him because of that. And here's his assertion. Bravery is the choice to show up and listen. And we want to challenge our lawmakers to be brave and to listen to this data, listen to policy solutions, and listen to young people. I mean, we know those lawmakers listen to national groups that bring dark money into Kentucky. They certainly listen to people who contribute to political action committees. They listen to high-paid lobbyists. We want to know if they have the bravery to listen to young people. That's the real test today. As we move through this, before we invite the Lieutenant Governor and some young people up, again, we really thank Charter and we really thank Kosare Charities for their support. The signature sponsor is Aetna, and Kelly Pullen with Aetna is going to come and bring us greetings. She didn't ask me to say this, but before she was at Aetna, Kelly was a leader in child welfare throughout Kentucky. So we're doubly happy to have you here, Kelly. Thanks for being here, and thanks for Aetna. Thanks for being here.
I always feel a little bit hesitant when I follow him speaking. He is just such a wonderful speaker and advocate for our kids. As Terry said, I'm Kelly Pullen. I am the Executive Director of the Supporting Kentucky Youth Program at Aetna Better Health of Kentucky. And as a health plan, we are really committed to supporting total health, that holistic approach to healthcare, knowing that true health has to recognize the whole person, has to meet their physical, their mental, emotional, social, and spiritual needs. Things like strong families, protection from harm, economic security, and high-quality education are all factors, in addition to good health, that really affect the total well-being of our children and our communities in Kentucky. And we at Aetna are very proud to be the signature sponsor for the Kentucky Kids Count County Data Book. We are blessed in the Commonwealth with many nonprofits, community-based organizations, community leaders, policymakers, and other individuals who work diligently to help to improve the quality of life for children across the state. And tools like this county data book, which provides an impressive snapshot of how our youth in Kentucky are doing across several indicators, are really integral to help that important work. Those of us who work in healthcare and work with health outcomes know that one thing tends to be true, and Terry mentioned this, that data really drives change. We can't fix what we don't understand. We know that the contents of this book is going to elevate our ability to identify and address these specific issues children face in the communities that we serve. Taking an accurate measure of the needs of children across Kentucky helps everyone, from healthcare workers to policymakers, and it helps them to improve the quality of life for our children in the Commonwealth. I would like to thank everyone here at KYA and the team that you're doing to improve health outcomes for our Kentucky youth. And we are honored to be a partner with you as you advocate for these policies that will help give Kentucky children the best possible outcomes and opportunities for a brighter future. I'll close with saying that we hope that after reading this book, stakeholders across the state are both proud of the progress that we've made and excited about the many opportunities that Kentuckians have to continue the good work that we've been doing. By working together and using every tool at our disposal, we know we can affect meaningful and lasting change. Thank you.
Maybe the most powerful line in the entire book that we're releasing today comes from a 15-year-old in Breckenridge County. Alexis says, helping kids is often easier than it seems. I mean, isn't it interesting that sometimes we almost get paralyzed by analysis? We think it's such a high hill to climb. But in fact, you're going to hear some ideas that can be immediate and practical talked about today. To do that, we have 4 folks who are going to come up. And I want to first of all thank our young people. I mean, what a sacrifice. Some of them are missing school today. It's a real compliment. I want to just introduce just for a second, and then they're going to come up without me introducing each of them each time they come up. Jordan is from Bullitt East. Jordan, why don't you wave to the crowd? And I mentioned to Jordan that we had a couple of journalists here who were Manual graduates, and he immediately asked me to remind them that his school, Bullitt East, just whipped Manual in the football playoffs. So way to go, Jordan. Corey is a young person from Youth Build. I will tell you that some journalists who covered the Greenberg-Durov debate that we did around kids' issues said that the best question that had been asked in any of those forums all fall was asked by Corey around juvenile justice. So everybody's kind of scared for you to come up here. And then closing out is Kristen from Graves County. She is a senior, and we are really appreciative that you're here, and I think a couple of her adults from Graves County missing school today also to get her up here. The other person I am so happy to have here today is Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman. You probably know that the Lieutenant Governor was an educator before she became the Lieutenant Governor. She knows I'm a flat-out fan of hers, and there's a lot of reasons, but I'm going to tell you a 12-second story, and this is why I'm such a fan, and you know what I'm going to talk about. The first time I saw her interact with young people, she was, 23 minutes away from giving birth. She was pretty pregnant at Children's Advocacy Day. And we had a reception late in the day, and it was for a group of young people who were in the child welfare system or who had just left the child welfare system. It was purposefully low-key. Late afternoon on the mezzanine, there was no press, there was no cameras, and the Lieutenant Governor must have stayed there forever because she talked to every one of those kids because she cared about every one of those kids, not because of the PR. And that's what I always hold when I think about you, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you for being here. So my understanding is that that football continuing pursuit of football championship person is going to be next. So Jordan, come on up here, and good luck to Bullitt East this weekend, okay?
Hello, my name is Jordan Jocelyn. I'm 15 years old. I'm from Bullitt County, Kentucky, and a member of the Health, Youth, and Bachelor's Program with KYA. In the 2022 Kids Count data book, nearly 1 in 6 sixth graders in Kentucky said they dealt with depression and anxiety. 21% of 8th graders and 25% of 10th and 12th graders said they have reported being under serious psychological stress. While kids can easily mask the stresses and anxiety of depression and anxiety, youth mental health is a serious concern, and we must listen to what Kentucky kids are saying. One quote that stands out to me from the data book is from Kylie from Yupi County. Kylie says, "Mental health is hard. Kids need breaks. Kids are so strong and capable of so much, but they're also going through a lot." Kentucky kids are still dealing with the impact from the COVID-19 pandemic and what it had on them and their mental health. Kids still have to deal with poverty, hunger, discrimination, community violence, and not to mention other stresses such as navigating school, friendships, and quarantine and isolation. I know personally during the pandemic, it was a struggle of seeing family and friends around me worried about money and where the next meal was going to come from. And for me, I was always so stressed. And as Kylie said, I just wanted a break. Racial disparities are also something to consider as we talk about youth mental health. Latinx kids and teens are struggling with anxiety and depression more than their black and white peers. This is primarily because of the reality of language barriers, agricultural stresses, and concerns with immigration status and stigmas around mental health. To me, mental health is very important because as a teen you go through a lot and you see things that adults do not always see. And seeing people go through hardships, depression, and anxiety can make you upset and want to change. This is what makes me so passionate about mental health. As a teen, getting good sleep, plenty of exercise, and drinking plenty of water, and having good friends around you can help your mental health and improve your overall health. And having an adult in your life that you can always trust and talk to is also great. Some of these in your school can be a teacher, counselor, principal, mental health, trained professional, or anybody in your school that you can trust. So today I please ask you to remember, we need you. Kids and teens need you. The importance of caring adults is vital for Kentucky youth. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for being here today for the safety and mental health of the Kentucky Kids Count.
Hey, my name is Corey Wheeler. I'm 20 years old and I'm from Jefferson County, Louisville, Kentucky. I'm a graduate from Youth Build Louisville and a member of Reform Louisville, which is a group working to make positive changes in our juvenile justice system. Within our group, we have talked about some of the violence we've seen in our community and how some of that stems off not having anything positive to do or having anything positive to do with any positive people around us. Yeah, can I just start it over? Sure. So I'm from a group called Reform Louisville. In our group, we talked about the violence we see in our community, how some of that stems off not having anything positive to do or any positive people around them. We found that not having any positive opportunities has led to more violence among young youth and makes it harder for you to have a safe place to simply be a kid. Within the safe community section, the students count book, the data point that stands out to me the most is youth incarceration in the juvenile justice system. In Kentucky, overall 13.7 per 1,000 youth are incarcerated in Jefferson County. It's 19.9 per 1,000 youth incarcerated. This data wasn't surprising, but it's always disheartening to see how many people are involved in the justice system. It's also disheartening to see how many complaints are filed against ages 12 and younger, seeing that young black youth children have complaints filed against them at higher rates compared to their white peers. There are a lot of negative stereotypes about kids who are in the juvenile justice system, but most of the children are charged with non-violent offenses. The need for safe communities is so important. Youth surveys where the county data book talked about the need for safe community spaces for them to be active or simply hang out with friends. Christopher from Johnson Co. mentioned the need to have places where kids and young people can come and spend time together. Just 16.7% of Kentucky children have access to neighborhood amenities like recreational facilities, libraries, playgrounds, and sidewalks. All children deserve supportive families and strong communities with equal opportunities to thrive. Kids also deserve a second chance when they make a mistake at a young age, such as access to diversion programs and other community resources without being stuck in the juvenile justice system. As Tyara of Jefferson County says in the book, state leaders should help make all kids feel safe, loved, and respected. They can do that by ensuring kids have space in their communities to hang out and just be kids and positive opportunities and activities for them.
Great job, you guys. Thank you so much. And let me just say that there is no more important work than than what we're talking about today, because we're talking about kids, we're talking about the next generation of Kentuckians, and if we are not working for them, then what are we doing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just want to thank Terry and KYA and everybody who was involved in this, because this is truly what we should be doing all day, every day, until we've solved every single one of these problems. I wish I could see more of my time to the students, because I love hearing from them. One of my favorite parts of this job is when I get to talk with students and hear about their perspectives. I tell everybody that I meet that if my interactions with students and my conversations with students are any indication, then Kentucky is in good hands. And I want to, excuse me, I want to echo some of the themes that arose from this year's data book. We know that issues like school safety, enriching connections with adults, and developing safe community spaces are critical for our youth. But I want to touch on one particular topic that is very important to me, and that is student mental health. In the summer of 2021, and if you are like me, 2020 and 2021 are the same year. You know, they all run together. What I knew was that our students were preparing to go back to in-person learning in the middle of a pandemic, and I kept thinking about how hard this was going to be academically, because they had pretty much spent an entire year with virtual learning. But it also did not escape me how difficult this would be socially and emotionally for our young people, because I knew all too well before the pandemic that our students were struggling with mental health. And I kept hearing adults talking to other adults about student mental health. And I thought that was a problem. So I set out to change that. And I set out to hear directly from Kentucky students about the challenges that they are facing with mental health and what they needed from us. I borrowed some of our brightest young minds from the Kentucky Department of Education's Student Advisory Council, and we launched the Student Mental Health Initiative. And when I say that this project was completely student-led, I mean that. We brought them in, we listened to them, we lifted up their voices, and we let them lead the way, and we offered help wherever we could. To the point where I thought we were going to be calling these things student mental health roundtables. And they said, no, Jacqueline, that's too soft, that's not active enough, it's too passive. These are going to be student mental health action summits. I said, you got it. So that's what we named them. And we held those action summits in every region of Kentucky. Hundreds and hundreds of students came to talk with and listen to the Student Advisory Council. And those advisors asked the questions, they developed the questions, they implemented those questions, and then they dove into the data that we found from those conversations. And we took that data and kind of went on a little bit of a roadshow and went around Kentucky talking to all of the agencies, public and private partners, and lastly with the Interim Joint Committee on Education about these recommendations that students had made. Their recommendations will probably not surprise you, but they included, first and foremost, elevating student voice, because so often it's not part of the solution, and it should be. Providing comprehensive suicide prevention, allowing excused mental health absences, and increasing and improving mental health professional development for our educators. And so what you'll see is from the Bashir Coleman administration, we will continue to lift up our students. We will continue to elevate their voices. We will continue to prioritize mental health as we continue to work through these challenging times. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, Terry, that I think there's an athletic analogy here. I was a coach, so we appreciate that. It is basketball season now, right? So I think of the data book as scouting our opponent, right? The KYA has done the work of scouting our opponent. They can tell us what we're up against, what it looks like, and now it's up to us to come up with the strategies and then to act, right? So in developing those strategies, we think about our game plan. What is this gonna look like? How are we gonna beat these difficult issues that we're taking on every day? But we can't stop there, because without action, all of this is for naught. And so that's where you implement your game plan, right? It's where the rubber meets the road, you get out and you take on your opponent again and again and again until you get it right. And that's what we're all called here to do today. And I'll close with a quote from Sadie. She's a 14-year-old from Davies County, and she said, "Our words still matter, even if we are young." And I think that is so critically important. If there ever was a time where we can and should put aside our differences to ensure every child in Kentucky shares in the freedom of possibility, it is now. It's going to take every single one of us working together. You have a steadfast commitment from Governor Beshear and myself that we will stand by and with everyone who puts our kids first, because that is what we are called to do. That is our most important job. Because these kids, all of our kids, are worth it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kirsten Yancey. I'm a 17-year-old senior representing Graves County as a member of the Health Youth Ambassadors Program with KYA. I'd like to take this time to thank all the previous speakers for giving their insight and their perspective on the Kids Count Data Book. When Kentucky kids were asked what they wanted from their governor, their response was listen to us. The youth need a voice, and they want their voice. Michaela and Hardin County. At least for me, it'd be nice to have adults check in and ask what I feel is best for me. I feel like a lot of adults assume the best for adults, and it doesn't always end up being what will benefit a child. Among my peers of high school and even middle school, what is most talked about is mental health. Recently, my classmates and I have dealt with COVID and the tornado of December 10th back to back. This has caused a lot of storm anxiety and feeling unable to miss school lest they fall behind. This has a huge impact on mental health, which is a nationwide issue. Elizabeth and Davies County. Mental health should be a big priority. As someone that has anxiety and it affects me every day, not just mentally but also physically, it is the best feeling knowing that people really care about me and the way I feel. A particular quote from the book that really speaks to me is more of a collection of quotes, with the following question being asked. What does it look for you to be thriving and living the life of your dreams? Tanaya, Jefferson County. I will be able to take care of myself. Clara, Jefferson County. I want a stable job and a livable home. Lila, Graves County. Achieving a solid education and settling down. Elizabeth, Davies County. I wish to be happy with myself in whatever I am doing. Christopher, Johnson County. Having a financially stable household. What they are listing as living the life of their dreams are things they shouldn't worry about as minors under the age of voting. They should be focused on going to school every day and seeing their friends, not worrying about when their next meal is going to be or if they will be safe and cared for in their own household. In the Kids Count Data Book, there are many statistics listed, all including a baseline comparison. With these comparisons, it shows whether this past year's data has a positive or negative change since the first initial data pool. So how do we ensure a positive change? Go to kyouth.org for access to the Kids Count Data Book. This is where you can check out your county's profile for economic security, education, health, and family and community. At the start of each of the aforementioned sections, there's a box titled Solutions. This provides a list of actions you can take to improve your county statistics. Timothy and Jefferson County. Leaders should know what resources kids need to do well in school. This is a starting point. And this is where my call to action begins. Ask your legislators to make decisions that are the most beneficial and create the best opportunities for our future generations. Be sure to vote in the upcoming 2023 gubernatorial race. This is where you can give Kentucky kids and families a voice that they so desperately need. Thank you for your time, and be sure to check out the Kids Count Data Book at kyouth.org.